they found the footage on a cracked GoPro, buried in the dirt like something trying to hide itself. It was late autumn when 3 friends, Mark, Tyler, and Jessica, set up camp deep in the woods of Black Hollow. The forest had a reputation. Hikers went missing sometimes, and there were stories whispered about strange figures glimpsed between the trees. Local legends spoke of a faceless man, a specter that wandered in the dark. But legends were just legends, and young people were always drawn to forbidden places. The camera belonged to Mark. He loved documenting their adventures, filming everything from crackling campfires to ghost stories shared under the whispering trees. The night started normal enough, laughter bouncing between the skeletal trees, beer bottles clinking. But then Jessica pointed something out in the distance. A shadow, unmoving, standing just beyond the fire's reach. "Someone's out there," she said, voice hushed. Mark turned the camera toward the darkness, its lens capturing the flickering light, the shifting shadows. He zoomed in. The figure didn't move. It was tall, its limbs unnaturally long. It wore a tattooed hoodie, the fabric torn at the edges, revealing glimpses of something pale beneath. But the face, there was no face, no eyes, no mouth, no nose. Just smooth, blank skin where features should be. Tyler cursed, backing away from the fire. "It's a mask," he said, though his voice wavered. "Some sicko messing with us." But the figure didn't speak, didn't react. It just stood there, swaying slightly, as if breathing in a way that no human should. Mark kept the camera rolling as he whispered, "What the hell is that?" Then it moved, not forward, not backward. It flickered, like a bad frame in a corrupted video, vanishing and reappearing closer and closer. A glitch in reality. 1 second it was 20 feet away. The next, 10. Jessica screamed. The fire dimmed as if something had sucked the warmth from the air. The darkness thickened, swallowing sound, distorting their screams. The camera captured it all. Tyler bolted first, crashing through the underbrush, but his panicked breaths cut off with a wet, choking sound. Mark swung the camera in time to see something move in the shadows. Something dragging Tyler backward deeper into the trees. His face contorted in terror, but he made no sound, only his fingers twitching, clawing at the earth. Then nothing. Mark and Jessica ran. The camera bobbed wildly, the footage a blur of motion and terror. They stumbled through the dark, the faceless figure always just behind, too close, too silent. Then Jessica was gone. No scream, no struggle. 1 second she was there, the next she wasn't. Mark didn't stop running. He crashed through the trees, branches slashing at his arms and face. His breaths came in ragged gasps, the cold night air burning his lungs. The darkness seemed endless, a void stretching in all directions, the towering pines closing in like the walls of a coffin. His legs ached, but he didn't dare stop. He reached an old wooden bridge, its planks rotting and covered in moss. The structure groaned beneath his weight, but he had no choice. He sprinted across, glancing over his shoulder. The faceless man stood at the edge of the bridge, motionless. The wind howled through the trees, carrying with it a sound that was neither voice nor whisper, but something in between. A low, droning murmur that made his skin crawl. Mark kept running. The trees thinned, revealing an abandoned cabin. It sat in a small clearing, its windows dark and empty like sightless eyes. The door hung open, creaking slightly as it swayed in the wind. He had nowhere else to go. He sprinted inside, slamming the door shut behind him. The cabin was small, its walls covered in old yellowed newspaper clippings. Mark flicked on his flashlight, the beam illuminating headlines that sent a chill down his spine. Missing campers found faceless. Black Hollow legend claims more victims. Police baffled, no trace of struggle. His hands trembled as he stepped closer, reading the smaller text beneath the bold print. The dates spanned decades, different years, different victims, but always the same story. A group of campers, a faceless figure, no survivors. Something creaked outside. Mark whirled around, his breath hitching. The cabin door stood ajar, swinging slightly. The darkness outside pressed against the threshold like a living thing. The camera in his hand beeped, a low battery warning. He barely registered it. Then the whispering started. Not words, just a rustling. A sound like dry leaves skittering across the floor. Mark's grip tightened on the camera. The light flickered. Then the door slammed shut on its own. He staggered back, heart hammering. His flashlight wavered as he scanned the room. The air had grown thick, suffocating. The whispering intensified, a static-like hum filling his ears. And then, a movement in the corner. The faceless man stood there, partially obscured by shadow. It hadn't opened the door. It hadn't needed to. It had always been inside. Mark's scream never left his throat. The footage cut off there, ending in a blur of trees and breathless sobs. The police found the GoPro half buried near the abandoned cabin. Its battery dead, its memory card filled with nothing but static. No sign of Mark, no sign of Jessica or Tyler. Just the footage, looping that last terrible moment when the faceless man finally turned its empty gaze toward the lens and smiled. It started as a joke. A late-night YouTube rabbit hole led Danny to the Smiling Man videos. Grainy, shaky clips of some gaunt figure standing in the woods, grinning at the camera. The smile was wrong. Too wide, too toothy. Sometimes he moved in short, jerky bursts, flickering closer between frames, like bad stop-motion animation. Sometimes he just stood there, swaying, hands twitching at his sides. The comments were a mix of theories. Some said it was an ARG, others claimed it was real. Theories ranged from cryptid sightings to a lunatic who lived off the grid. Danny, like an idiot, laughed at all of it. "We should try to find him," he told his friends. They all thought it was hilarious. A drunken bravado turned into actual plans. Blackwood Forest was only a 2-hour drive away, and several of the Smiling Man videos were supposedly filmed there. They packed up for a weekend trip, ready to chase an internet ghost. By the time they set up camp deep in the woods, the fun had started to wear off. The trees stood too still, the quiet was too heavy. It was the kind of silence that made you feel watched. That night, the wind picked up, rustling through the trees like whispers. Danny sat by the fire, flipping through his phone. Then his screen flickered. Static crawled across his apps. His battery dropped from 80% to dead in seconds. The others had the same issue. Every phone drained. That was when they heard the laugh. Software, high-pitched, almost a giggle. It came from the trees, distant at first, then closer, then closer. Ben grabbed the flashlight and aimed it into the trees. "Who's there?" he called. No answer, just another giggle, choked and wet, like someone laughing through a mouthful of blood. Then they saw him. He stood just beyond the fire's glow, tall and thin, his arms hanging too long at his sides. His face, that smile, it stretched too wide, cutting across his face like a wound, teeth yellow and sharp. His lips curled back, exposing blackened gums. His head tilted, jerking from side to side like a broken marionette. And he was staring. Just staring. Then in the space of a blink, he was closer. Ben screamed. The flashlight flickered. The smiling man twitched forward, his limbs moving in a series of stuttering, unnatural jerks. His feet didn't seem to touch the ground. Danny bolted. The others followed, crashing through the underbrush. The trees blurred past in the darkness. Branches whipped against his arms and face. Behind them, that awful giggle rose and fell, growing louder. Then he heard the footsteps. Not one set, many. Danny risked a glance over his shoulder. There were more of them. Smiling men, all identical. Too tall, too thin, too wrong. Their grins gleamed in the dark as they moved in flickering stop-motion bursts, closing in. Ben tripped. His scream cut off as the smiling man reached him. Danny didn't look back. He ran until his lungs burned, until his legs gave out. They found an old ranger station at the edge of the woods. The building was abandoned, windows shattered, door half off its hinges. Danny and the others stumbled inside, bolting the door behind them. The air smelled like mildew and something rotten. Maps were scattered across the walls, old missing persons reports pinned between them. Then they heard the laughter again. It was inside. Ben wasn't with them, but someone was. A figure stood in the far corner of the room, its smile stretching impossibly wide, teeth catching the moonlight through the broken window. The smiling man. Danny backed up, heart hammering. The others whispered frantic prayers, gripping whatever makeshift weapons they could find. The lights flickered. A soft giggle echoed in the room. Then the smiling man was gone. Or rather, there were more now. They moved in jagged bursts, appearing closer with every blink. The walls creaked. The floor groaned beneath unseen weight. Then, a hand shot out from the dark. Danny swung wildly. The thing shrieked, but it didn't sound human. It sounded like a tape being played backward, like laughter stretched into something broken. He ran. The others ran. Out into the woods, out into the night. The trees swallowed them whole. The sound of footsteps surrounded them. When Danny finally reached the road, he collapsed. A truck's headlights bathed him in harsh white light. The driver jumped out, shaking him, asking if he was okay. He was alone. The others were gone. The police found their campsite, but not their friends. They found Ben's phone, though. The last video showed him running, panting, crying. Then it showed him stopping, turning, smiling. Danny left town. He tried to forget. But some nights, when he closes his eyes, he hears it. That wet, choking giggle. And when he looks in the mirror, his smile is too wide. Then he hears the whisper, right behind his ear. Tag, you're it.